Hello and welcome to UK Low Carb and a very special live indeed. This is a podcast where we share individual stories to help grow the low carb and keto community, not just here in the UK, but also around the world. And today is truly an international show. I'm your host, Dan Grief, and I'm joined today by the Keto Dudes. So I'd like to welcome Carl, Carrie, and Richard to the show. Welcome, Keto Dudes, to UK Low Carb.
Hey!
Yeah. Well, to have you all back in one place is really special, but the fact that you've brought back your show is even bigger news. So it's really good to have you all back, guys. So I just want to kick right off and talk about what you've been up to, really. Now, we did a show, didn't we, in October? And back then, I think you were telling me, Carl, that you started in March of last year with COVID. So you were quite sick. Did anyone else catch the disease at all, or are you all pretty much healthy throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, I was fine.
I think I was fine.
We could be smug. Sorry, Carl. Must have been awful for you, old chap.
No. I was actually, it wasn't that bad. I had a cough that lasted a week. I didn't have any fever that I noticed, but the most egregious problem was I lost my sense of taste and smell. And for that first week, when the symptoms really hit me, the only thing I could taste was salt. And it was interesting because I was holed up in a hotel room in Portland, Oregon. I was actually out on the road doing some work and decided to, stay and isolate myself. There were no tests available at the time, but it was pretty obvious what was going on. And I was actually in a hotel that I got this hotel room with a kitchen, like a suite. And they were very surprised to learn that I really wanted to sear steaks that had been sous vide on high and set off every manner of alarm. And I found myself opening and closing the door to the room very quickly to fan out, because apparently, the hoods that they have in hotel rooms, they don't vent.
Who knew? I've never cooked steak in them before, I guess.
No, I kind of knew that, but I didn't care. So I had to, the reason I got a hotel room with a kitchen is because I needed to cook for myself. Because, hey, if I'm not going out, I'm not ordering freaking pizza, I have to eat the right stuff. But that sense of taste and smell lasted a good long time. And I could sort of tell it was getting better. But I was 75% back for a long time. And it was only after a year where I thought, I think it's back to normal now.
Yeah, I've heard about this. And people have had these long COVID symptoms, haven't they? Which I don't know if that's just one of them. But I know somebody who's had to give up his job now. He was very lethargic. He was feeling terrible all the time. He said he had to go on his hands and knees up the stairs to get to the next floor, which is terrible. And he's really
do that
suffered.
every night.
Okay. That is before COVID hit. Okay, good. That's an image we didn't need.
Sorry.
So, Carrie, how about yourself? What have you been up to since the show ended and then the pandemic hit?
Well, the pandemic hit, and from my perspective, so most of my audience, as it were, are on Facebook, and very quickly, and I think in America, it was, of course, a bit more unique because not only did we have COVID, but we also had the upcoming election. And there was just all this mess on social media, which is where I do most of my stuff. And so the audience, a ton of people just left Facebook. But I noticed that the participation in my keto groups was just tanked, kind of roundabout. I think it was like the end of May, June, when we were all thinking, oh, it's going to be 2 weeks and it's all going to be good again. And then it didn't. And then it didn't. And then we got to summer and everyone was like, oh, and it was like everybody dropped off the cliff.
Right.
So say web traffic, and I know it wasn't anything me because all of the people in my little world was saying the same, blog traffic was in the toilet and Facebook, nobody, they were all sitting there watching you, but nobody was participating. So, doing lives and stuff was just like pulling teeth. because nobody was participating, and sales of cookbooks dropped off. Like, everybody left the mailing lists. And so I had to do a pivot. I kind of pivoted into commercial food photography. So that's how I got through the pandemic from a business perspective. That's how I got through. And now that has kind of grown. That has not gone away again. That has that's become the largest part of what I do. But now I'm seeing, actually, just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, people are back on Facebook. People are starting to participate again. There's a lot more noise. When Carl finally let me announce that we were coming back on the podcast, there's been hurrahs around the world, like, we need you. It's been awful without you. The podcast kept us going. So I do think that now it is starting to not go back to normal, but people are starting to get into their new normal. And I think people are starting to think, okay, this is where we're at. Now I've got to get back and figure this food thing out and this health thing out. So, but for me, it was commercial food photography that I kind of had to do this quick pivot to.
Fantastic. Did you find that in the States and Australia that, well, certainly in this country from 2016 onwards, that Facebook became much more about the extremes and more normal people? I say normal, it's my judgment, isn't it? I guess I count myself as normal, and my wife will tell you that's not true. But I just think, more kind of moderate people were just like not as interested, like just to pull away from it. And it's becoming a bit more like an extreme mouthpiece for people on either end of the spectrum. Whereas, a lot of just average people like me just thought, I'm just going to leave that behind now. I'm not really interested in that. I don't want to hear all this in my face. I'd rather look at cat pictures, which I know you would like to do, Carrie, I'm sure.
I supported the whole world with my cat pictures throughout the pandemic.
I think
how many do you have, just out of interest?
7 now.
7. Okay, excellent.
I think Facebook is 2 groups. There's your local group of friends that you grew up with and your family that you want to keep in touch with. That isn't affected by the rest of the Facebook universe. And then there's the people that just want to, stir the pot and get views and whatever. Now, whether it's in a positive way by doing selfies every day, or in a negative way by just
pushing
and
buttons.
Unfortunately, I had to say goodbye to a lot of my Facebook friends, which makes the problem worse. But I'm sorry, I'm not gonna. I don't want to read your diatribe. That's just a rant.
I think the unfollow button was the most used button of 2020. Was
Right?
just like, because I didn't want to read. I might love the person, but I don't want to read all the negative stuff either side on the political spectrum, or all the COVID stuff. Like, I just didn't want to see it. And I think that's where all the moderate people, all the normal people just kind of. But
also, it should be fine to say, if Richard shares an opinion and I say, well, I've got this opinion, that should be absolutely fine. And we can leave as friends. But what I found interesting was it's become very much on both sides. I'm not taking any sort of partisan view on here in politics or in, health terms. It's become, well, you would say that because you're stupid and I'm right. And that makes me clever. And that's the implication. And that's terrible.
But both sides, all the sides were saying that, right? So it's just so we're all stupid.
Yeah, it is extreme straw man. I think you're right. It's like the ultimate ad hominem. You're an idiot. Of course, you'd say that. And if you're on my tribe, you'd be on the side of righteousness, and you'd know that this is obviously makes sense. And if you're accusing people of being cowardly or stupid, then I turn off, because I think, well, now you've lost the argument for me. You're not making a point. You're just you're having a go.
I'd like to put in a real quick plug for Nextdoor, which is an app that's kind of like Facebook, but it's for your local community. And I found that that's been great, trying to get my friends and family, my local friends, to go over there, and then we can just walk away from all this other crap.
Well, we
Sorry.
feel very much cut out of that because we're the most unlocal you can be right now, really, aren't we? So, cheers, Carl. Can we be your local friends, even if we're in Britain and Australia? And yeah, okay. Professor Richard, I was going to ask you a quick question about what you've been up to, because you're like now well, you've got your degree and you've got your honours, and I want to find out about your story. But anyway, I cut over you there. Very sorry. What do you want to say?
That's okay. No, I was just going to say that I made a conscious effort in 2016 not to exclude people because I wanted to see where the crazy was coming from on both sides. And so I have a lot of Facebook friends who are never Trumpers, and a lot of Facebook friends who are only Trumpers, and that is kind of that's one demarcation of the extremes that you referred to. And I kind of want to understand, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing that makes them so sure of their claims? Because firstly, I want to be able to know, am I missing something? Is there something that I don't see that they see that is important in order to form my opinions? And secondly, it's good practice for me to step in and not offensively, but if somebody's out there giving information that's factually incorrect, and I know it's factually incorrect, it's excellent practice for me to step in and try recasting their facts in a light that won't deflect their it doesn't deflect what they're trying to do, but it makes the people who are following them not be led astray, because that happens a lot. So so I don't take it personally when people believe in things that I don't believe in, because not everybody has the same fact basis and education and priors that I do. So, but I certainly want to know what their priors are. I want to know where they're coming from.
But I think ultimately what you're saying there is you would question someone's fact, not say that they're wrong, just the basis of what they're saying might be questionable, which is different, isn't it? And that's the respect element that's right to show people. And you know what, anyone watching now, you might have a different opinion on lots of different things, but you're all welcome here to be part of the conversation. Just want to say before we go on, there's some lovely comments coming in from people around the world, which is pretty exciting. So here you've got Angela, who says, happy to be here. Welcome to UK Low Carb.
Welcome,
and
Angela.
The dudes. Welcome, yeah. As I heard, I've only heard the beginning of your show, but I love the way you call yourselves Keto Carl, Keto Carrie, Keto Richard. I'm Keto Dan. Okay, good.
I don't know if that wasn't an official title. I was just
Carl sprung that on me, and I'm like, no, you don't. You're not going to rebrand me. That doesn't happen without a prior agreement.
Okay, it's already kicking off. It's already kicking off.
It's called thinking of some fluff at the spur of the moment.
Yeah, nice. I think you got away with it. As long as you don't admit to it, you'll be fine. Becky here says hello from the US. Hi, Becky.
Hello, Becky.
Love to hear which part of the states you're in. It's always nice to know because it's such a massive country. We got Marcy says greetings and hello everyone. Hello to you. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Oh my God, the keto dudes. And who's that limey in the corner?
Oh my God.
That's a bit rude. And a Brit guy who's ruining it all. We've got hello here from Western Australia, so it's in Perth.
G'day.
And
Ex-Perther here.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Sure.
There you go. You connected. And how far is that from you now, Richard? That must be about 4 hours time zones, isn't it, or something? That's a long way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Connecticut versus California, or New York,
or Britain and Connecticut. It's almost
True.
5, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a guy called Carl Franklin says howdy. So there you go. Cousins galore here. So you must have more cousins around the place, you Franklins. And that's where it's come from. So excellent. Thank you so much for that, everyone. It's great to know that you're listening and you're following us all. I was going to ask a few questions of the dudes, really, and also find out about your show that's coming back again. So what's this turning point? What happened exactly? Why is it now the right time, do you think, to come back? And as you're now coming back into the world of podcasting again, what's changed in the world since when you left, do you think? And I mean, we talked about the pandemic, but in terms of nutrition advice and in terms of keto, is it a different world now than it is in 2020, or is it pretty much the same?
Go ahead, Richard.
I think one of the reasons we decided to come back after I completed my graduation. That was one of the triggers. Also, Carl really wanted to get back into it, and the podcast for him has always been a commitment device, and so this was an opportunity for him to go hardcore and
Round
go
two.
HAM on that round 2. So there was that. It also, everybody seems to have a podcast. It seems to be I was feeling out of it. I was feeling like, Russell Brand's got a podcast. Ricky Gervais has a podcast. I'm like, I had a podcast.
Dan Greaves got a podcast. If he could do it, anyone can.
I know, Dan Grief has a
everybody's got
podcast. What is the world coming to?
You have a podcast, Dan? Do you?
Yeah, my mum listens, my wife now and again. Now I've got you 3 and your followers, so that's something.
We're up to 4.
So there was that, and there was also, there's been a lot of COVID really threw a spanner into the works, because the keto community sources from a lot of people who are questioning souls, they don't trust official advice, and are always looking to do their own research, and these are times where the facts aren't obvious, and for the most part, the ability to detect the difference between 2 experts in a field on the subject of their field who totally differ is almost impossible for us. So we're expected to hear 2 epidemiologists talk about the same thing and give 2 totally different opinions, and then we're expected to do our research in it. And I completed a degree while I was away, and did 2 actually, but and I've been trained in how to analyze science, how to do how to conduct scientific experiments, use a scientific method, and in a lot of cases, I've been trained specifically in some of these fields, and yet I don't feel qualified to tell the difference between 2 experts who experts in, say, virology or immunology or whatever ology there is. I can come up with rough ideas about where I think their balance of evidence is, and who may be more right and who may be less right. But we kind of expected that to work all of this stuff out. And so part of the reason for coming back on the podcast was to start to, at least in the keto space, is to start to state the claim for what a ketogenic diet is, who it's for, how it works, and try and simplify things a bit, because I think we've got a little bit out of control in the keto world during the COVID disaster.
Wow. Could I just ask you on that one, though? I mean, I kind of agree with you. I don't know, because I'm not a scientist at all. So I can't look at different studies and say, oh, this one works because, and that one's got flaws because. But then the thing that annoys me is that's not really our job as citizens. I mean, obviously it's important, we care. But I'm surprised by how journalism's so bad at breaking this apart. And, that's one thing I think about Nina Teicholz, who's coming on Wednesday, and Gary Torbs. They actually are people who came into this completely neutral and just said, hang on a minute, let's blow this apart and look at what's going on here. But that happens so rarely, doesn't it? You get these scare stories about eggs kill you because of the cholesterol, and the journalists just seem to be so lazy, or maybe they're on certain sides of the argument because of financial reasons. But that is a shocking thing. And as an individual, what can you do?
You just hit the nail on the head right there. If you
Carl said I got something right. Thanks.
Well, it's true. If you follow the money and you find out what incentives are for news stations or whatever, it doesn't take a genius to see that the ones that are making the most money have the worst product, and the ones that are so sure of themselves, usually there's some money behind that, whereas somebody like Richard, who just does the research and says, he's very loath to take a stance to say, a fundamental truth, this is always right, and that is the sign of a good scientist. It's actually hard to peel apart these things, and it takes, you have to gradually go down a route of logic that might lead you to an easier decision than black or white. But it takes patience, and it takes a little bit of time. And so if somebody is just saying, it's always this, or it's never this, or it's a sure thing, 100%, that's a good red flag that somebody's paying them to say that.
I agree. I mean, the difference is, though, when you first started your show, what was the year you started the Two Keto Dudes podcast?
2016.
2016, yeah.
2016.
February.
I think the world's a bit different now because keto has become, well, it's not ubiquitous, but it's certainly better known than it was in probably all our countries, especially I'd imagine in the States. I don't know about Australia, but in Britain it's becoming more known. It's still a bit behind, I think, America, which also means that you then have the other problem with more people understand it to a small degree. So that means that they can be manipulated by the big food industry when it's going to eventually bring out all its keto products. And you just have to look at the label and say, what the hell is going on here? And that is worrying too, because I guess when you started, it's probably like, oh, this is keto. You eat eggs and bacon and but actually the food industry is catching up now, isn't it? And that does worry me a little bit.
Worries me too. The reason, let me say the point where I thought, keto has sort of made it was when they mentioned it on the Food Network. But the problem is it was in the context of high protein, not high fat. So people still don't get that you have to add more fat and remove the carbohydrates, not just add protein to make something keto.
But also you have to have enough protein. You have to have enough protein, but it's not like a high protein. That's the most important thing. No,
but also the type of fat, though. The type of fat, it could be seed oils, couldn't it? Compared to like having coconut oil or animal fats. That they're quite different. And I imagine that the food industry will go down the cheaper route because it wants to think, oh, fat's fat, so pack in the sunflower oil or the canola oil, and that'll do the job.
And here in the US, there are so many keto products now that we all still have to read all the labels. Even if it says keto, we still have to read all the labels. And a large percentage of those keto products are things that, we wouldn't eat. Carl and Richard and you, we wouldn't eat them any more than the regular stuff. So that's the problem. And I think we probably have a bigger problem here just because we have, as you say, Dan, we're a few years further forward, and we've got a lot more companies that are producing keto products, but coming soon to the UK.
Yeah.
It's how markets work. So a market will move to find a need and satisfy it, and that's how free markets work. The problem is the information, and I think part of it has to do with there is a problem with the dietetic, that is the professional dietitians in all of our three countries. They seem to be unable to or unwilling to take a stand on some issues. So, for example, in the 80s, when the dietary guidelines came out, and we essentially took a bet. It was either going to be low sugar or low fat, and we decided that it was going to be low fat. And so the dietary pyramid was based around, okay, let's construct a diet with essential nutrition that is as low fat as possible. And so there was, lots of starches, lots of fruits and vegetables, and fibrous foods, and trimmed meats, but very little meat, and certainly, no fats. And if you do eat fats, prefer unsaturated fatty acids rather than saturated fatty acids. And what did the food industry do? They went out and worked out a way to formulate that particular story into a selling claim. It's fat-free or it's low fat. And if you were to walk down the aisle of the cereal, the cereal manufacturers seem to be the most attuned to being able to source out a niche and fill it with whatever. The actual product of a cereal, the cost of the product in the box is cheaper than the ink used to print the outside of the box. And so it's a matter of taking a very cheap product and giving it some claim that gives it some nutritional halo. And in the 80s, it was all low fat. And so you walk down the cereal aisle and you'll see all of these low fat cereals. And what's happened recently is that people thought that the ketogenic diet, every time it comes along, whether it's the first year of Atkins or the second year of Atkins, which is I was kind of involved with in the early 2000s, or the keto era, which is really from 2014 really till now. At each stage where this comes along, the dietitians make the fatal mistake of thinking, oh, it's just a fad. And so you'll see that the US Health and News, US, what's it called again? I have a link here for it. US News. Yeah, US News World Report gives a list of the best and worst diets every year. And every year the ketogenic diet is on the bottom, and the text, the messaging they put around it is, oh, this diet was a fad, but it's going out of fashion. And you'll see all of the dietetic commentary in the media will be, oh, it's a fad diet, it's going out of fashion, and it refuses to, because it has some functional benefit to the people who are on it. That is literally reversing their type 2 diabetes. And it's got nothing to do with fashion, it's nothing to do with influences. It's all about a diet that treats our disease. So anyway, to cut a long story short, if you walk down the cereal aisle now, what are you going to see? All the cereals are high protein. Protein has become a health halo. So you can say, everything, my product is high protein. It may be exactly the same product, and maybe there's an extra gram per 100 grams of protein in it, but it's a health halo. So
it's still going to be laden with sugar, isn't it, Richard?
It pretty much, yeah. But it's high protein, so
right. So
protein's essential,
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, yeah. The only difference is
I
marketing. No, you're right. The only difference is marketing, isn't it? You just literally take probably the same product and you put a different label on it, and it's a different thing suddenly. But that's where I think education comes in, and I think you're right there to say, we don't necessarily know, looking at scientists, etc., what they're saying and how accurate it is, and that's always tricky. But actually, as individuals, we can definitely know what we put in our mouths as what's in our food. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Carrie, about checking the label. I think we just have to do that all the time, because any food that's manufactured by somebody, you just have to just know what's in it and know if you trust that brand or not. And most of the big food, I mean, from its record the last 40 years, has been pretty disastrous. So I'm going to carry on checking until I know that food is good for me. So what I say is a lovely comment just come in here by Valentin. I just want to, or Valentine, sorry. I'll share this here. So I discovered the Two Keto Dudes podcast in early 2020, and I pretty much listened to every episode in order. It's pretty much transformed my life. I'm down about 45 kilos from my heaviest weight and feeling the best I've ever been. To say I was sad when I ran out of episodes to listen to was a bit of an understatement. I'm so happy you're back. Show me the science. Isn't that absolutely lovely? Show me the science. But that's the difference. That's the fad. Like, surely somebody who's transformed their life for the better, that's not a fad that's going to suddenly be changed by looking at something else, is it? Like, veganism suddenly, or the next diet, the marshmallow diet, or whatever that comes along. That's the human body responding to proper nutrition. And that's the difference, I think, with the keto diet, that it works. It's not a fad. It's something that's actually based in all these N=1 examples. And that's what this show's about, sharing those stories and getting that out there so that people can realize that, just like that person, I might have had an issue with X, Y, Z, and yet they've managed to reverse their diabetes, to lose weight, to whatever it might be. They managed to heal themselves or put into remission their conditions because of keto. And that's not going to change, because as Ken Berry said, this is the human diet. And I honestly believe that.
It's been the human diet for millions of years, right? I mean, if you think about it, if you just take away all the stuff that we've created in the last, let's say 300 years, maybe even 400 years, since the Industrial Revolution, since even since we started baking bread and all this stuff, that ketosis was probably the natural state of being, right? And so, we've gone hundreds of years, and, people who grew up eating Cracker Jacks and Alphabets and stuff, and they're like, ketosis, what is that? That doesn't sound safe, right? When it's actually carbohydrates are the fad diet.
But I also think that the dietitians are kind of focused on weight loss. So this is the latest weight loss fad. And they seem to completely ignore the fact that no more symptoms of bipolar 2 disorder over here, no more,
10 toes.
10 toes, just completely, like diabetes, right? Cousin Carl and our friend Richard in Australia. And there's thousands and thousands of people all over the world now who are finding that it's not just about weight loss. And there's people who have plateaued, are like, okay, I've plateaued, but I'm still going to keep on eating this way because of this laundry list of other things, other diseases, other symptoms, other things that I now don't have to deal with. I sleep better. I have energy. I like this endless list. My sweat doesn't stink. I don't have to wash my hair every day. From the big things down to these tiny little things that if you add them all up, and the dietitians who are labeling this a fad diet just seem to be like myopically focused on weight loss. They're not even thinking, not looking at all of the other benefits, which for us three particularly completely outweigh the whole weight loss thing.
Yeah, it's very much focused on the fashion world, that, isn't it? The perfect body and the look rather than the health. And actually, the thing that's very true is that, for instance, an ex-head teacher, when I used to be a teacher myself, an ex-head teacher of mine, he was a long distance runner doing marathons every other week, it seemed, running miles and miles and miles a week. And then a stick thin, you look at him to say, super healthy guy. He's now had several heart attacks in his 50s. So, the look of being healthy and the reality of what's going on inside you can be quite different things, can't they? And I think that refocus on actual health and metabolic health is essential, like you say, Carrie, not this aesthetic look of what somebody should be and then they're actually quite unhealthy. Were you going to say something there, Richard?
I was just going to say that when we first announced we were going to come on, we were going to start our podcast again, there was a troll in one of our groups who said, how can why is anybody listening to these guys? They're fat. And have they lost any weight in the past year? They haven't.
He didn't even ask that question. He just
said, whoever it is, I want words now. You're going to come here and talk to me because you don't have a go at my friends.
But no, he can say that to my face and I'll stick my diabetic toe up his ass. But, because
it's coming back out again. He's not staying there.
So in the past 7 years that I've been keto, I lost 50 kilograms and I put maybe 10 kilograms back from my lowest, but I'm still 40 kilograms down. So that's the first impossible thing I did.
A lot.
Second impossible thing was I was about to lose a toe when I started a ketogenic diet as a last resort to not go on insulin. And, I was about to lose a toe and literally this diet saved my toe. So reversing type 2 diabetes, up until about 3 years ago, the Zurich Food for Thought conference was the first time where a conference where essentially the academy said, okay, yeah, it is possible to reverse type 2 diabetes. It can be done 3 different ways. Well, keto is one of those ways. That used to be considered impossible. So, that's the second impossible thing that all of us, that certainly Carl and I certainly have reversed our type 2 diabetes. And it's the funny thing is that I really didn't do this for weight loss. It was not even a secondary consideration. I did get interested in biochemistry and went and got myself 2 degrees in the past year. So, I do have that as my achievements for the year. But, you have this a lot from people who see diets as part of a fashion trend. And it's not so much, a fashionable diet, but, I want to do a shirtless selfie. Well, here's the trick. If you want to do a shirtless selfie, you have to starve yourself and you have to do it. You have to put yourself through a lot of pain, and I don't think you're making yourself healthy because the science shows that, for example, the Danish longitudinal study shows that people who are overweight, at the top end of overweight, are the ones that live the longest. So, the people with a BMI above 28 are the ones who live the longest. And so why would I want to have my BMI between 20 and 25? I wouldn't, So anyway, it's a way of looking at this, and I guess I reject the whole fashion part of this picture. It's got nothing to do with what we're doing.
On our podcast, we've always maintained that this is a place that's safe for people who are either being fat shamed by their peers, their family, or themselves. We do it to ourselves. You know, we feel bad about ourselves, but you can't get stuck there. You have to, you know, do it to be healthy and do it for the right reasons. And we always wanted to have this community where, you know, like even when we did Keto Fest, we had trolls driving around taking pictures saying, look at all these fatties, right? Why would you take advice from these guys? And it's like, we're not, you know what, this isn't like Jack LaLanne here. You know, we're our spokespeople are just like you. That's the point. You know, we're all on a journey here together, and I think that's I'm very proud of what we've done so far, and we'll continue to do in the future.
But Carl, don't you think if you were, you know, somebody, well, just take a person is eating like Doritos or something, nobody would say a word. But if a slightly heavier person's putting butter on their steak, they say a lot of words.
They lose
and
their
I find
shit.
that weird. Yeah.
I know, right? Hey, you eat a lot of butter, don't you? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's when my hair looks so fabulous. but you know what? I just think on that.
Dan just say my hair looks fabulous.
No, it's all about me. Sorry.
Oh, you.
Yeah, yours is all right though, cousin Carl. I'm trying to claim family kinship there. But I honestly think people do. And actually, the sad reality is, I think you said this on your show previously, actually, is that people look at somebody's journey and they try to make out that somehow, you know, that's what you are, but they don't know where you've come from, do they? And that's the other thing, you know, you could be eating steak or whatever 6 months down the line, lost loads of weight, and they're like, oh, that's really bad. That's why you've got a weight issue, without realizing that actually where you've come from is the journey you're on, and where you're going to is tomorrow. So you don't know where they're heading to. And actually come back in 40 years and see how healthy you are.
I think of our friend Tom Seast, right, guys?
Yeah.
Tom Seast started his journey like at 500 pounds or something. And he's lost 300 pounds plus 350. Like but if you look at him today, you'd say, oh, that guy is like, he does not take care of himself. Yeah, you should have seen him at 500 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and actually a lot of it's healing his body inside as well. You know, that's the other thing about plateauing, Kerry. You don't know what's going inside in terms of getting healthier, do you? And the cell regeneration, and especially you put that alongside fasting as well. The autophagy benefits is massive. So, yeah, but I was just going to move on, if I could, to something else. I know we've got amazing comments coming in here, and I'll share some of those in a moment. One of the things I noticed on your show is that you very much focus quite often on the science, and you talk about the biochemistry of a person and what's going on when you're eating keto and how it might affect you, you know, the way you feel, etc. But I was going to talk to you about the emotional and the addictive side of food as well, because that is an important part of the story. And, you know, it'd be remiss to just talk about food as a fuel when clearly we are emotional beings. We are not always rational. We are human. And so there's that huge element as well. Is that something you would talk about more on the show now? Or is that not so much what you're interested in? Or what are your thoughts on that topic?
For me, it's not something I've trained myself in. I've not studied the whole psychology of addiction and the like. So it's something I feel exposed. I feel ill-equipped to comment on it, but other than as an everyman. But Carl certainly. I mean, he's on the podcast has spoken to this subject quite a lot.
I have, and I considered myself a carbohydrate addict in one form or another. Never really been a sugar addict, but certainly bready things and crispy, bready, crunchy things. For almost my whole life, those have been the foods that have triggered me and kept me going back. In fact, I remember waking up one night at 3 a.m, from a sound sleep, getting up, putting on my clothes or bathrobe or whatever, driving to Burger King for a big bag of crap, you know, like, and so, but I don't know I think the psychological, and I'm just speaking from my experience here. I think the psychological works with the physical, and I think it has something to do with your gut and the state of your microbiome. I'm not sure, but I noticed that after doing keto for a couple of weeks, it feels like the bugs in your gut that are pulling the strings in your brain are dead. And the silence, you know, and the silence is wonderful. And there's not these little, and I felt compelled, like I felt like I wasn't the one in charge, walking to the fridge, you know, at midnight and saying, you know, what kind of bready thing can I put in my body? but that has been that has started to come back as I've gone through the pandemic and slipping back. And I don't think I'm alone too. I think there's a lot of us out there, especially during the last couple of years, that have it's so easy to slip. And once you slip, if you don't correct it immediately, you're going to continue to slip. And so it's a roller coaster that's hard to get off of. The only solace I have is that I know from my prior experience that, just buckling down and being low carb for a couple of weeks, as hard as it sounds, is what's required to sort of silence the voices.
What do we tell people when they fall off the horse?
Get right back on. Oh yeah, bacon and eggs.
Bacon and eggs. Well, get right back on again.
I literally had that just before this show. I had bacon and eggs for that reason. Sorry, Carrie, go for it. You there, Carrie?
She's frozen in a smile.
Half of Connecticut's been wiped out. Carrie, come back. Oh, she's gone. Oh, she's down there.
I think she might be having bandwidth issues.
Well, just while you're coming back in there, Carrie, I just want to say that I totally agree with you on that. So my philosophy is when you fall off the horse, to really enjoy the keto food as soon as possible, because that's the great thing with this. It's not a hardship. If you said to me, do you want a ribeye steak? My answer is always yes. I might be asleep, but I fancy it. So, you just enjoy it again. And actually, I noticed we had an Indian takeaway the other day, and I went for the low carb options, didn't have rice or anything, but I'm absolutely convinced there was sugar in one of the dishes. It was a bit sweeter tasting. Today I'm starving, hungry. So before this podcast, I had bacon and eggs, which is exactly your advice. And I feel amazing after that. Like I'm filled up. I don't crave food. And there's that point, isn't there, where Gary Fetkes talks about you go from I can't have that to I don't want it. And I think that's a key. You just got to get through that period to get to that point in your mind. I think I filled really well there until the true star comes back. Carrie, you disappeared briefly. I'm so glad you're back with us. I was worried that something big had happened there, like a cat had peed on your laptop. No.
Very well trained cats in this house. It's like a little army squadron. I say that T word, TREATS. I can't say it out loud because there'd be 7 cats all over the place. So anyway, what I was going to say.
Day to say it, Carl.
She's got headphones on. She's smarter than that.
Oh yeah, true.
I think the last year, I think a lot of people, certainly the people that follow me on Facebook, that I have a little peek into their lives. I think a lot of people were completely shocked at how their keto world was rocked by the stress of COVID. There's a lot of people who I think were caught by surprise, who were these kind of staunch keto forever, I feel so good, when life was normal. And then this wave of like stress and financial disaster for some people, and grieving, not being able to see people, the isolation, all of that. I think a lot of people in keto were rocked by how that did. They weren't as rock solid as they thought they were. When everything's going well, it's easy. But I think a lot of people were shocked at how sideways they went when all of these horrible things all started happening at once. So I think there's a big emotional factor, and even if it's not like a grief emotion, I think the stress just in itself, even stress that you're not necessarily really conscious of or aware of, it's doing things inside of you. It's affecting hormones, which then affect everything else, which for a lot of people has led to damn it, I'm just going to eat a pizza. And then, as Carl said, once you start, like if you don't self-correct immediately, that whole carbohydrate like binge thing, it's almost like your body just gets up and goes and does its own thing. It's kind of beyond your mental control at that point. And I think that's why a lot of people just ended up now going, oh my goodness, like what happened? And how do I get back on?
Totally agree with that. I think it's our evolution actually kicks in. I think we get to the point where this is what I've realized in me. If I eat carbs today, then it's almost guaranteed I will tomorrow. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's not just the today event. It's that I know that something in my body goes, I need that. I'm exactly the same as you in that way, Carl. I think it's bread. It's wheat based. Breaded chicken for some reason is way more desirable than just normal chicken to me. And I guess it's the way it's made, it's produced, it's fried. But I just know there's almost a guarantee of this isn't a choice for one meal or one bite. It's going to be a choice that's going to affect the next week or two, or certainly the next day.
Yep,
and I think you're right. And I think there's a BBC article, by the way. If I find it, I'll post it. And I was reading it this morning, and it said on average in Britain at the moment, people have put on an extra 3 kilos, which is, I worked out, so 6.5 pounds as a population per person in the pandemic. Now, when you're facing, as we thought, the end of the world, then macros suddenly go out the window, and people are just comfort eat, I suppose. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But we need to be human and say, look, we're all in this boat together. And that's why I'm so glad your podcast back to say, be a real person and realize that, you're not perfect. You're not a god. You're a person who needs a bit of help sometimes. We're all in this together. No one's perfect superhuman here.
There's another bit of truth that we need to address, which is that if you're going to do the ketogenic diet right, you're going to need to cook for yourself. And if you're going to cook for yourself, you can't rely on quick products like you used to, like, sandwich meat, just take out some bread and eat, right? You really have to cook, and you need to spend some time with your food, cooking your food and preparing your food. And so that's something that even in this age of the pandemic, when we've all been home and had plenty of time to do it, for some reason, there always seems to be, oh, I don't have time for that. Really? Because if you look around and look pretty close, I
you have
think
time.
you do. Yeah. So I always said
cooking up a couple of pork chops is quicker than microwaving, reheating a pizza.
Right. That's right. And, Carrie's a perfect example. I mean, she's got tons and tons and tons of recipes, and she showed us all that you can eat really enjoyable foods that don't have to be hard to create or expensive. But then again, I made the claim that the kitchen gadgets that I use, I look at them as important as medical equipment. You got
that in your kitchen as well, have you?
I do, yeah. I have an
scalpel IV. or knife for the cutting.
Right. I have a butter IV. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, but that's true, isn't it? I suppose the time you take. Although a very important point here: pork chop or lamb chop? I mean, which did you go for, Carrie?
I'm heavily on the lamb side right now.
Gotta be.
Because Costco all of a sudden have shoulder and loin lamb chops. They've never had. They've only had the fancy little wildly expensive ones.
Yeah, hang on. You can't say about offers in your own country that 50% of the panel can't get access to. That's a bit upsetting.
He's like Costco, cousin Carl.
Yeah, Carrie and I
true.
shop
That's
at the
true.
same Costco now.
East
And you get
Costco
New Zealand
have the
lamb.
shoulder chops.
All right,
from New Zealand or Australia, but anyway, they now have the
same difference.
Chop. So I'm all lamb all the time right now.
Fantastic! You can't go wrong with that.
And if you think I can't get lamb in Australia, then you've got to.
Exactly. I'm obviously you're right there. Exactly. You got Wales, we've got New Zealand, and Australia.
But if it comes from New Zealand, it's already shagged. So.
Cheered.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
it's like your bullshit. It's a pronunciation thing. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the comments now, because any of our New Zealand listeners here might be deeply offended. I was going to go to Chris here. Yeah,
I love New Zealand.
Here we've got Chris. He says he's a trucker out all week and has lost 70 pounds in 9 months eating this way, from a pan and stove, 18 stone to 13, which is fantastic. Well done to you. Excellent results. We also have Becky, who says some lovely things about Carrie. Is awesome, showing us we can eat delicious keto food. It doesn't need to be hard or expensive. The expense is something I hear all the time, actually. And it'd be good if you can talk a bit about that, because Tim Noakes himself talks about this.
Diabetes is expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Think about the cost to healthcare systems and insurance. But actually, to the individual, though, keto, several things. Firstly, I don't eat as often as I used to because I'm just not as hungry as I used to be. But secondly, you don't have to do it in a really expensive way with the finest cuts of meat, do you, Carrie? It can be many different options which make it
instead of
keto.
lamb.
Yeah. Or offal, that's something that I've tried to experiment a bit more with, and of course it's very, very cheap, so you can go down that route certainly. Okay, let's see if there's anything else here which is interesting. We've got keto changed my life twice. There you go. So not only do they go down from 8 stone, 7 pounds down and maintaining, they're fitter, healthier and stronger. My infertility is predicted by my GP. I beat that and have 2 children. Absolutely a credit to keto. Amazing.
That's awesome.
Keto fertility is a thing.
Yeah. As we heard, Kelly Hogan, is it? I think when she's on, she talked about going carnivore and her fertility was put right, which is incredible. So
PCOS, like type 2 diabetes, is a disease of insulin resistance, and it's also like type 2 diabetes. It's cryptic. For most people are type 2 diabetic for a decade before their glucose rises, and their doctor said, "Oh, you might be becoming pre-diabetic now." No, you've actually been diabetic for 10 years. And it's the same with fertility. And you only have a short window of fertility. So, you don't want to have a decade of that tied up with insulin resistance.
No, completely agree. Another inspirational story here, lost 70 kilograms and put type 2 diabetes into remission. Keto for about 5 years now, so it's the norm for me. And that's the thing, it becomes a lifestyle, doesn't it? As somebody else said here, it's not actually about, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And I agree with that completely. This, by the way, Chris is coming back on here because this is exactly the same sort of situation I was in. Putting a Cornish pasty between bread. Now, in all seriousness, I used to eat crisps, like potato chips, you say in the States, between bread. Crisp butty, that used to be a staple for me when I was like 17, and chip butties. But in all honesty, if I think about it, it's a lovely thing to eat, but it's not a taste thing. It's a texture, I think. It's a comfort thing.
Well, it's a carb thing.
It's a carb thing.
Your body is craving that.
Yeah. And it's
My taste buds want a Cornish pasty now.
Have you got a recipe for a keto Cornish pasty? Then you can make a lot of Cornish people happy.
Yes,
no,
lupin flour.
Do I have to put that on the list now?
Yeah, half lupin flour, half almond flour makes a great empanada dough.
There you go.
Press. It's great.
Love it. By the way, there's so many comments coming in, and I will try and get through these guys, but there's so many. It's so nice to know that you're listening all over the world. Some people are saying they're listening in Sydney, driving their bus. Please be careful when you're driving a bus. Right, I'm going to bring this up right now. I was cycling home the other day from the gym, because I'm a gym guy. I've been 7 times in 4 years. And
nice to meet you, Jim.
It'll be number 8 this week. Okay. And I was cycling home, and one of the local Deliveroo, like the takeaway drivers, was watching the football match, England playing, the soccer for the Americans out there, was watching the soccer match on their phone while driving and almost ran into me. So can I just say, I don't want anyone who's listening or watching this right now in the world driving buses killing anyone. Please be careful, Mel, for that comment.
You're not missing anything visually. Just listen.
I don't know. I said about our hair being fabulous, and now you're writing it off. I can't believe it. Okay, so I just want to ask you then the next thing, and that was, what did you learn? Or I'm going to ask all 3 of you this. When you did the show before, what was the thing that you learned? Just a lesson that stood out, because I also want to find out why you're doing the show again and what it is you plan to learn, or who is it you want to speak to learn from them in the show as well. So who wants to go first with what they learned previously when they brought out the podcast?
I mean, I can.
Go for it, Cole.
Okay.
All right. So at first, I learned I had a superpower, and I wanted to share it with the world. And I was so excited, and it was great. And a lot of people were reacted very positively, but a lot of people reacted negatively. And over time, that became more and more of a problem. And at the end, when we took a break in 2019, December 2019, we went on a long hiatus, right? There was something else going on, which was keto fatigue, which had nothing to do with the lifestyle and what I ate. Had everything to do with just being around your friends, and like they're eating stuff and they're like, "Oh, sorry, Carl," as they're eating a pizza. Like I'm going to arrest them or something, right? It's like, no, I don't care. Just do your thing. And the other thing was, of course, just trying to, well, actually, as Richard says, just people who just don't understand. And I found myself just, trying to help everybody, but knowing that they're probably not going to listen and probably not going to take this to heart. And so it just became very depressing. So I learned that you have to do it for you. And, if you can help other people along the way, that's great. But you can do it by pointing out resources, pointing out like the forums and pointing out the podcast and stuff like that. And just, encouraging people to listen. I have friends with cancer now who I'm like, man, just listen to this, right? Just all you really have to do is stop putting sugar in your body, right? So it was depressing, but I'm certainly learned the first thing I learned that's stayed with me this whole time is all of the superpowers of being ketogenic, being ketotic, I guess you'd call that.
Great. And actually, it started, didn't it? Originally, I remember you saying in October last year, because Richard said, without breaking you completely, which he's worried about, he wanted to see, keep you accountable and to do the podcast to try and get you through somebody who was starting the keto lifestyle. So, do you say earlier on this is your second, go at it now in that sense?
Yeah.
Of
so right,
accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And the podcast I'm doing it just as much for me as I am for everybody else who I think is in my shoes, which is, for me during the epidemic, it was like too much wine, too much cheese. So, it's keto foods, but just overindulging and eating at the wrong time of day and all of that stuff. And the pounds began to come on, and then you're like, screw it. So you have an occasional pizza or cheat meal or something. And then it really gets hard. It gets hard to unwind. But, so it happens, right? And this is what I'm acknowledging. I'm acknowledging this happened to me. And, I understand keto. I know what to do. And I want to re-engage with the community and, and Richard and Carrie and all of you out there listening. And just sort of go on the second round of this journey with you.
Yeah, we're going to the moon, right? We're going to the moon. We're going to bring back the evidence to show you, and then you can come with us and do it. Exactly. It may seem ridiculously hard, but it is doable, and we're in this together. Love that. Carrie or Richard, who wants to tell us about what you learned in the show previously, and what is it you want to experience or learn, or who is you want to talk to in the future shows?
Go for it, Carrie.
So I'm a bit of an odd one out in this scenario because I hopped in to help out while Richard was busy becoming a biochemist. And I came from another podcast, which was all about, I lost my ear, which was all about food. So I'm not talking specifically about my experience on 2 keto foods. I'm just talking globally that what I noticed was that the vast majority of podcasts were all about why you should do it and the science and what happens, but nobody was actually telling you, okay, but this is what you put on your plate. So there was no translation between this is why you should do it and this is the science and this is what's happening versus, okay, what do you actually eat? So when I started my prior podcast, that was all about, okay, great, but this is what you actually eat, like these things. And then through that process, I became aware of how many people actually are completely lost in the kitchen. And that's I'm not pointing fingers. I mean, it's just life over the last, 40 years, both parents working, everyone eating fast food, all of those things. And then we've ended up with a large population who wouldn't know one end of a kitchen from the other. And so then I started to kind of think, how can I help people? Yes, they know they need to eat eggs, but fried eggs every day for most people is not sustainable. So then how can I teach people who don't know a wooden spoon from a chopping knife? How can I teach them basic skills and give them recipes that are simple enough that they can feel confident to go in there and have a variety of keto food that is delicious and sustainable, and they can actually do it. So that was kind of what I learned was how many people were really like, great, now what do I eat?
Mm. And I think that's so relevant now, like you're saying. If people have come out of the pandemic feeling like they want to really embrace their health again, you need that, don't you? You need to be told, here's some suggestions, why don't you try one of these? And then the great thing about the media nowadays, the social media, they can actually share their plate with you and say, look what I made, Carrie, what do you think? Could you give me some feedback maybe? Who knows?
But other than my prior podcast, I think Richard and Carl were pretty much the only keto podcasts that were actually at the end saying, oh, by the way, and here's what we actually eat. There was the science and the why, but actually this is how you translate it. And I think mine was all about food. Theirs was the only one that was not mostly about food, but did add that. And here's the practical application of the science we've just shared with you.
And I got to say, I learned a lot about keto cooking from Richard. I learned everything from Richard, pretty much.
I learned a lot during the process, because when I didn't cook until I was 40. In fact, I probably didn't cook until I was like late 40s, maybe 47 or something. I'm 55 now, so I've only been cooking for pretty much as long as I've been keto. I had maybe 4 recipes, and one of them was cooking tacos out of a box. And I did teach myself to cook because I was interested in it. I wanted a good meal. I knew, well, I was learning the nutrition. I was learning the metabolic processes from people like Stephen Finney and Tim Noakes and Jeff Follick, and then trying to apply that for myself. So I did this for 2 years before Carl came along, and so I'd already had 2 years of doing that. So my, what Carl got to see the finished product. What he didn't see was all of the mistakes that I made to get to that point. But that's now I've been doing it for 7 years. I'm absolutely perfect.
Wasn't it the true that a clever person learns from the mistakes and a wise person learns from somebody else's? So, you've passed that forward there, aren't you? What's really weird, actually, when I hear your voice there, Richard, I remember one of the recipes. I was driving back from a job in a school that I didn't really like. And I used to listen to your podcast on the way home on the car. And I remember once you're talking about you cut some onions, and then Carl was like, not too many. They're quite carby. Yes, that's right, Richard. Not too many. Richard was like, yes, Carl, you're quite right. You chop your onions. And actually, your voices were so kind of familiar to me, like friends. I find it quite strange that we're actually talking, and actually I can have this conversation with you because you are such real people, which is lovely part of the show as well, that you're on the same journey. You're not coming out there saying you must do this. You're saying, look, I'm making this today and I've done it wrong or whatever, and what do you think? And you can try it yourself, and it's a lovely part of the show. So hopefully much more of that to come.
We're not superstars. We're doing this for our own purposes, and the whole podcast thing is an unusual type of social media. It's a one-way social media where everybody who's listening to us has probably listened to 200 episodes and knows our lives intimately, and we really don't know them at all. So it's a one-way sort of process. But we're not superstars. We're not narcissists. We don't refer to ourselves in the third person. We're just not. That's not what we essentially what you see on the podcast, what you hear on the podcast is pretty much how we have a conversation in normal life. It's not convected. It's not an act. It's essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to buttress our own treatments of our own disease states with a diet and a lifestyle, and share that progress with people.
And I might also add that we have jobs.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying us to say X. Or not to say X.
We don't have boot camps. We don't have cookbooks. We don't have, we're not doing it. It's not a mechanism for that. So,
well, Carrie has cookbooks.
Yeah, sorry,
I have one.
I'm going to.
Here we go. It's coming out now, isn't it?
I'm planning to write one.
So who has got a cookbook here now? Don't me.
Yeah, but I think
we're totally sellouts.
I think that there's a difference, though. If I make a cookbook and I sell it myself, it's still me. If there's some corporation, whatever bakery or whatever that's selling keto pretzels or something, and they're paying for our livelihood, know, then they can have the right to say, hey, you said this that goes against you're taking people away from our customer base and blah blah blah.
Totally,
That's
it's
a
got to be
real
your
thing.
thing. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
I think if you're working for a big corporation, then you're their
Right.
mouthpiece. You're not your own. So I just want to ask then, Richard. I don't know if you answered the question about what do you want to learn in the new series, or who do you want to speak to, and are there any exciting guests coming up that you can tell us about here on this live today?
So there was a bucket list of people we haven't yet spoken to, and on that listing are people like Jeff Volek, who I would love to talk to. I'd love to talk to him about the cheese study, because that's a study that shows that the mechanism of action of a ketogenic diet on reversing metabolic disease is not weight loss. In fact, they made sure that during the study, if people started to lose weight, they fed them more to stop them losing weight, to make sure that weight loss was off the table. And when you think that central obesity is one of the hallmarks of metabolic disease, they only had 4 other hallmarks that they could modify. The obesity was off the table. So, that's I'd like to speak to him about that. There's a bunch of people that I'd like to speak to, but I guess what I learned, both in the first podcast and in the interregnum between the 2 podcasts, is I can't go to somebody with some information. I have to just give the information and hope that they come to me. And I've made this mistake a couple of times where so there's somebody in my lab who's a type 1 diabetic and is celiac disease, and would be perfect, would really is the target demographic for a low carb intervention, and I can offer her books to look at, but I can't go out and say to her, you need to do this. What I can do is I can do a podcast about the mechanism and hope that she gets it one day. And so there was a guy on Facebook who was a PhD who was running a company that's basically taking an extract from sugarcane to make this magical drug that will treat diabetes. And the guy is clearly pre-diabetic. He has, he is so unable to burn fatty acids for energy that his neck is just full of fat. His face goes to his stomach, and so clearly. And I made the comment, you're really on the wrong track here. If you're trying to treat type 2 diabetes, and boy, I wish you all the best success, you really need to look at your insulin dynamics. And he jumped down my throat, and he was right to do it. It's not something that I should do on a Facebook group. I can't approach somebody and say, look, I think you have a problem and I think I have a solution. That's just not me. What I can do is I can explain what I understand about metabolic disease and talk to some of the experts about it and learn as much as I can about it, and hope that an audience comes to us, essentially. So
yeah, love it. And be the change in the world you want to see, right? So living it, sharing it, that's the thing that might inspire somebody rather than telling them. I think that's definitely true. And I think it's respectful to that person as well. Nobody wants to be told what you're doing is wrong, even if it's true. We don't want to hear that, do we? So I suppose inspiring other people is way more important.
Did you hear that, Mom? Did you hear what he said? I'll play it back for you.
Yeah, I could say it again. Right, Mrs. Franklin, we need to have a word because... Well, I just want to say, before we wrap up, there's only one thing I want to ask you about, and that is, of course, Keto Fest, which I know that the world is very different to when you last had a Keto Fest in 2019. Did you say, Cole? 2019? Yep. Mm-hmm. The pre-pandemic world where people coming together from all around the world seem like a different era to now at the moment anyway. So have you got any plans in that direction, maybe in a year or so from now, or maybe even sooner?
We're... as they say in Texas, we're fixing to think about it.
Right, so our international listeners, what does that mean?
We have no definite plans, but we're as Richard might say, we're keen to do it, but we don't know yet if it's possible or if we decide to do it, when, where. Are we going to be in New London again? Are we going to be somewhere else? Is there going to be a second epidemic, which it looks like there might be coming among those that are not vaccinated? That's a whole nother story. And Richard and I have gone back and forth about how much we want to talk about vaccines on the show, but I don't want it to be the two keto COVID show.
Yeah.
But so there's a few things that we need to, and then the other thing is we've usually done it with a Kickstarter. Do we need to do that again? So we're having
an audience.
Yeah, we already have an audience, but then again, we've been away from our audience for a couple of years, so we're thinking about it.
Yeah, well, if you're listening now and you're interested in that, then maybe get in touch with them and let them know, because that's the thing. You said it's one way, Richard, and that's definitely true. However, this is a good piece of feedback to have as to whether you want Keto Fest again. I never went to Keto Fest. I went to Low Carb USA in San Diego. That was very good. Mm-hmm. But I think it was the same week, wasn't it? Keto Fest. Oh no, it was Real Food Rocks was the same week in this country to Keto Fest, wasn't it? Yeah. And we were going to do something live. So maybe we could do an international thing where on a certain week of the year, different countries could get together to do their own thing and then link arms together across the seas. That'd be
like
cool,
Live Aid for keto.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to get on Concorde and come over to the States.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, sorry, not a bit of a dated reference there. Sorry, Richard, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, Sam Feltham and I were talking about the whole Keto Fest, Real Food Rocks. I interviewed him for the podcast, and it was like a couple of months before we were doing it, and we had already set the date. We'd run the Kickstarter and everything, and he was trying to work out his date, and it just turned out to be the same. The best date for him was that date, and we spoke about it, and we were talking about, wouldn't it be maybe it'd be an idea to have a live feed, a live cross from one keto event to the other, but the technology was a bit difficult to set up back then. It's not out of the picture. Look, if we have another epidemic, I'm not going to even be allowed out of Australia. So maybe we have a Keto Fest in Canberra and another one in Connecticut at the same time, and we have we have both video feeds and live events at both, and do something that way. I mean,
right.
This is really, I mean, we like the idea of doing it because we think it had value for people. We're not sure how many people there are that would want to go, but and obviously that's a financial concern because they're very expensive to put on. But there's a lot of unknowns. Yeah, that we're going to have to navigate, and one of them is what's going to happen with am I going to be able to even travel to Connecticut next year?
Right. So there's one thing that we know for sure, which is nothing's happening in 2021. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, right now you can't leave the country, Richard. So
right,
and it looks like that might be the case for a while.
And I'm fine with that, Carl. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, but the other thing is we all kind of want to get together, And so a post-pandemic Keto Fest would be the biggest, most fun bash ever.
It would, wouldn't
right?
it? Yeah. You got through the other side of this massive, great pandemic. You want to get together with your friends, which is natural, isn't it? I mean, I think an international one in the meantime would be a great idea. The only thing is we'd have to work out our cocktail hour, wouldn't we? Because Richard's drinking at like midnight and you're drinking at 10 in the morning. It could just have a bit of could shape your day differently, shall we say?
Coffee versus scotch.
Yeah, the sun's always over the yardarm somewhere in the world.
That's the philosophy I like. Yeah.
Today I'm drinking on Tokyo time.
Here's to the Olympics, eh? Well, actually, you're in Tuesday now, aren't you? It's gone past midnight, and
it has.
Yeah. There you go. So, happy new day to you.
Mm-hmm.
What's Tuesday like? I want to prepare.
It's actually not too bad.
Looks dark. It looks dark to me. I don't know if I like it.
Dark, does it.
Yeah, I like what you've got behind you, Carl. Much nicer.
That's right.
I'd rather have that Monday any day than Australian Tuesday.
That's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm always delighted when we manage to connect Connecticut, Canberra, and Cambridge together. So it's been great to get the 3 Cs in the same place at the same time. And it's also fantastic news that you're returning to our ears. So thank you for coming back on UK Low Carb, but also coming back with the 2/3 Keto Dudes. Are you going to change your name, by the way, at some point? Because the number 2 now seems a little bit ironic considering you're 3 people.
I think
Well-
it's an in joke. It's an in joke for everybody who's been listeners.
Right.
Why are there 3? Well, you'd have to know. You have to be an old timer to understand
Well,
how
you
that
have
works.
to read the about page.
So when there's 17 keto dudes in the future, we all look back and say, "You weren't there at the beginning, man. You don't know what it's like." Yeah,
How many Doctors Who are there?
that's true. I'm
does-
not a geek. I wouldn't know, Richard. Can you tell me?
It does bring up
17
it
or
does
so.
bring up something that we need to mention, though, which is when Richard was at school, Carrie and I were the 2 keto dudes. And then we did a couple where Richard came back and everybody's like, are there 3? Are there 2? What's going on? So now the show is going to be primarily me and Richard doing the old format and the old style, and Richard bringing the science and me being the dumb guy in the room, which is, I do that well. And Carrie's going to come on for recipes. So Carrie's not going away. She's going to be
I'm
part of
bringing
the
the
family
food.
forever.
Great.
Yep.
And it's lovely to see a show evolve and develop and change as the characters come in and characters, your real people, sorry. But as you come and bring your own persona to that, it's great. That's great. So thank you, dudes. It's been absolutely wonderful having you back on UK Low Carb. And I think your show is live now. Is that right? The first episode of the new batch of shows. And is it every Monday it comes out?
Yeah, 2ketodudes.com every Monday, and the ketogenic forums, ketogenicforums.com, are now working again. They weren't working for a while. We've got 3 Patreon accounts. We've got one for the podcast, one for the forum, and then Carrie's for recipes and books. And we have a Facebook group and Instagram and Twitter. So it's all there. Go to
All the
2ketodudes.com.
Excellent stuff. And just want to give a little shout out to somebody, Mel Meacham, who's listening, who's a great listener to the show. It was actually her story earlier on about fertility issues, but we didn't know her name. So big shout out to you, Mel. Well done. That's fantastic. To all of the dudes, though, thank you so much. And I'll let you go on with your days or your sleep now. But take care, guys, and check out their show on all podcast apps or go to their website. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Dan.
See
Bye-bye.